What if I told you that a young African leader in one of the poorest nations on Earth suddenly announced he was building the largest solar farm in the whole of Africa? Imagine it, in a country where electricity is scarce, where darkness still controls the lives of millions once the sun goes down. A massive sea of solar panels stretching across the dry Sahel, shining like a modern desert lake, catching the fire of the sun itself. This is not just about energy. This is about survival, power, independence, and the kind of future that could rewrite history for Burkina Faso, and perhaps for all of Africa. But would such a bold vision succeed, or would it threaten too many interests to ever come alive? Before we go deep, subscribe the channel if you like Ibrahim Traoré. Ibrahim Traoré is not a leader who plays it safe. At just 34 years old, he shocked the world when he rose to power in Burkina Faso, promising to free his people from the shadow of poverty, dependency, and foreign control. He has spoken of sovereignty, of dignity, of building a future where Burkina Faso does not beg, but creates. Now, imagine him stepping forward with this new idea. A solar farm so vast that it could power not just his nation, but much of West Africa. The ambition is breathtaking. Yet the question is, how does such a dream begin in a land where most villages still struggle to light a single bulb at night? Burkina Faso sits under one of the most generous skies in the world. The Sahel sun is merciless, beating down day after day, often burning crops, drying rivers, and leaving the land thirsty. But what if that same sun, once seen as a curse, became the source of life itself? Scientists have long said that the Sahel holds some of the greatest potential for solar energy on the planet. In places like Germany, where the sun shines less, solar panels already cover rooftops and fields. But Burkina Faso has almost 3 times more sunlight hours, untapped, waiting. Traoré would know that. He would see what others overlook, the gift buried inside the hardship. But this is not just about engineering. To build the largest solar farm in Africa, Traoré would need land, money, technology, and above all, political courage. Imagine the announcement in Ouagadougou, a project to cover thousands of hectares of desert land with shining blue panels, connected with new transmission lines, humming with energy. The people would listen with awe. For decades, Burkina Faso has been among the lowest in electricity access. Families cook with firewood. Children do homework by candlelight. Hospitals run out of power in the middle of the night. To them, this project would sound like a miracle. For the first time, the promise of light would not just be words, but something they could picture. Yet in politics, every miracle has a price. Building such a solar farm would require billions of dollars in investment. Where would Traoré find it? The West, perhaps? But relations between Burkina Faso and Western powers are tense. Traoré has openly criticized France, the former colonial power, and questioned the role of Western aid. Could he then turn to China, which has already built massive solar farms in places like Egypt? Or Russia, which now seeks influence in Africa? Each partner would bring opportunity, but also strings attached. Choosing one would shape the future alliances of Burkina Faso. In that choice, the fate of the solar farm would no longer be about technology, but about geopolitics. Now imagine the construction beginning. Trucks arrive with equipment. Workers pour into the desert. Machines dig foundations. Panels rise row by row. In the early stages, the skeptics whisper, "Is this too big? Too ambitious?" But slowly, the sea of glass expands, catching the sun. With every panel connected, the dream inches closer to reality. Villages nearby begin to see the change first. Where once there was silence at night, Suddenly radios play, refrigerators hum, and children laugh under electric light. These small signs ignite hope. People start to believe that Traore is not just another politician, but a leader daring enough to transform their reality. But such progress cannot remain unnoticed. Foreign companies that have long sold electricity in Africa through expensive diesel plants would feel threatened. Oil exporters would see a danger. If Africa moves to solar power on a massive scale, demand for fossil fuels will weaken. This threatens not only corporations, but also powerful nations whose economies depend on controlling African energy markets. Would they simply watch Burkina Faso lead this solar revolution, or would they try to stop it? History shows that when African leaders attempt something bold, resistance always comes, often in the shadows. Yet Traore has a weapon his opponents might underestimate: the will of his people. If the solar farm becomes not just his project, but the people's project, fueled by national pride, then attempts to sabotage it may backfire. Every new light bulb in a village would become a symbol of resistance. Every solar panel a silent declaration of independence. Electricity is not just power, it is freedom. With it, farmers can irrigate their fields, businesses can stay open after sunset, schools can connect to the internet, and communities can dream beyond survival. But there is another layer to this story, one that reaches far beyond Burkina Faso. If the largest solar farm in Africa truly rises, it would not only transform one country, it would send a signal across the continent. Neighbors like Mali, Niger, and Ghana would watch closely. If Burkina Faso can harness the sun, why not them? Slowly, the idea could spread, a chain reaction of solar projects across the Sahel, creating a belt of clean energy from Senegal to Chad. Imagine West Africa, long seen by the world as poor and unstable, suddenly becoming the beating heart of renewable power. The global narrative would shift. Instead of seeing Africa as a land of need, the world would begin to see Africa as a source of energy. But with that recognition comes risk. Control of energy has always meant control of destiny. If Burkina Faso becomes a pioneer in solar energy, it will need to guard against new forms of dependency. Will the technology come from China? Will the financing come from Gulf states? Or will Africa find a way to develop its own solar industry, training engineers, building factories, and creating jobs? This question could determine whether Traore's dream becomes a true revolution, or just another project owned by outsiders. In Ouagadougou, the political scene would grow tense. Opposition leaders might accuse Traore of gambling with the nation's future. They might question the cost, the debt, the sustainability. Some might whisper that he is dreaming too big, that Burkina Faso should first fix its roads, its schools, its hospitals, before chasing such visions. But Traore knows something deeper, that without energy, none of those things can thrive. Energy is the foundation. Without it, no economy can rise, no education system can expand, no hospital can modernize. For him, the solar farm is not a distraction, it is the key. And yet, another challenge looms larger than politics or finance: security. Burkina Faso is a country at war with extremist groups that control parts of its territory. Building a massive solar farm in such an environment is not just a technical problem. It is a strategic risk. Could the project be attacked? Could armed groups see it as a target to embarrass the government and prove their strength? Protecting such an installation would require new strategies, new alliances, and perhaps even new forms of cooperation with neighboring countries. This is where the story becomes even more complex. The solar farm would not just be an energy project. It would become a fortress of hope, guarded not only by soldiers, but by the trust of the people. If communities near the farm see it as their lifeline, they will defend it with everything they have. Traore could use this project to rally unity in a country often divided by crisis. The farm would no longer be just a field of panels. It would be a national symbol, like a flag waving in the desert. But how would the world react to such a symbol? In Paris, policymakers would watch nervously, wondering if Burkina Faso's independence means the end of French influence in West Africa. In Washington, strategists would ask if Traoré's alliances lean too far toward Moscow or Beijing. In Beijing, businessmen would see opportunity. In Moscow, diplomats would see leverage. Suddenly, a solar farm in the Sahel becomes more than energy. It becomes a battlefield of global politics, fought not with weapons, but with contracts, influence, and promises. And yet, amidst all this, the ordinary Burkinabe would experience the change most deeply. A farmer, once forced to walk miles to fetch water, could now power a pump. A student, once limited by candlelight, could now study under a bright lamp, connected to the internet, dreaming of futures once unimaginable. A mother, once worried about her child in a powerless clinic, could now see incubators, refrigerators for medicine, and constant care. These small transformations, multiplied by millions, would weave a new story of what Burkina Faso could become. The solar farm would also challenge something more invisible, the psychological shadow of dependency. For decades, many Africans have been told that their progress depends on aid, on charity, on foreign donors. But a project of this scale, built on their own sun, on their own land, could ignite something powerful in the minds of the people. The idea that they too can lead the future of energy. That they too can stand at the front of global change. The farm would not only light homes, it would light imaginations. But such imagination can be dangerous. If the dream grows too strong, if Burkina Faso begins to shine too brightly, some may decide it must be dimmed. History has shown us many times what happens to leaders who push too far against the system of global power. From Patrice Lumumba to Thomas Sankara, Africa has seen its visionaries cut down before their dreams could flourish. Would Traoré's solar farm face the same fate? Or could he finally break the cycle, proving that a small nation, once ignored, could lead the way into a new era of energy and independence? The answer lies not just in the panels or the politics, but in the delicate dance of survival that Traoré must play. If he moves too fast, he risks collapsing under pressure. If he moves too slow, the dream fades. The solar farm is both a beacon and a gamble, a vision large enough to inspire millions, but heavy enough to attract enemies. And so, as the sun sets over the Sahel and the panels glisten in the twilight, one question rises in the warm desert air. Can this young captain of Burkina Faso truly hold the light of the sun in his hands and keep it burning for his people? When the first streams of power flow from the desert into Ouagadougou, the air in the capital shifts. Street lights flicker to life where there had been darkness. Shops stay open later, markets buzz after sunset, and the rhythm of life begins to stretch into the night. The people feel it before the politicians can explain it. Something fundamental has changed. For the first time in generations, the nation does not wait on others to give. It generates its own light from its own land. This is the heartbeat of independence, humming quietly through electric wires. But with every watt of power produced, the stakes grow higher. The region feels the tremor first. In Mali, Niger, and Ghana, leaders watch as Burkina Faso suddenly holds more energy than it needs. Energy in the modern world is like water in a desert. Whoever controls it can shape everything around them. Traore now has the power to decide whether that energy stays at home or crosses borders. Exporting electricity could earn billions, but it also risks dependence on foreign buyers. Keeping it within Burkina Faso could fuel local growth but limit regional influence. Every path carries both opportunity and danger. Soon, the neighboring governments begin sending delegations. Some come with open arms, proposing regional cooperation. They imagine a West African power grid, where countries share electricity, stabilizing the region and lifting millions out of poverty. Others arrive with suspicion, whispering that too much power in Ouagadougou might upset the balance. They worry that Traore's solar farm could make Burkina Faso the unexpected center of West African politics. For a landlocked nation once overlooked, this sudden rise is both astonishing and unsettling. But Africa does not exist in isolation. The great powers now circle. China offers to expand the project, bringing its companies, engineers, and easy loans. It promises to help Burkina Faso not only build panels, but also factories to produce them locally. Russia whispers about security, protection for the solar farm, military cooperation, and a new alliance against Western dominance. France, caught between history and the present, debates how to respond. Can it regain influence by offering investment? Or has Traore already closed that chapter? And the United States, seeing energy not just as economics, but as strategy, begins to analyze whether this solar farm allies or competitors. What began as a domestic project has now become a node in the web of global politics. Traore must navigate carefully. Every partnership carries hidden costs. Every deal shapes not just the solar farm, but Burkina Faso's place in the world. He knows the stories of African leaders who leaned too heavily on one side and fell when the winds of power shifted. He must try to do what few have done before: balance the giants while keeping control at home. Inside Burkina Faso, the transformation deepens. Villages that once struggled with poverty now begin to taste the possibilities of energy. Small businesses bloom. Mills, workshops, and internet cafes. Schools connect to the digital world. Clinics run with steady power. Farmers install solar pumps, freeing themselves from the tyranny of rain. Each change may seem small, but together they weave a new fabric of life. And in that fabric, hope grows stronger than fear. Yet progress is never free of conflict. As the solar farm expands, questions rise. Who owns this electricity? Will it reach the poorest villages? Or will it be captured by the cities and industries? Will the profits from exports enrich the people, or only a new elite? These questions are not technical. They are political. They test whether Traore's revolution is truly for the people, or if it will repeat the mistakes of the past, where wealth flowed upward while ordinary citizens remained in the shadows. At the same time, the enemies of progress sharpen their blades. Extremist groups, once targeting villages and soldiers, now turn their eyes toward the solar farm. To them, this project is not just infrastructure. It is the heart of the government's power, the symbol of Traore's promise. Attacking it would send a message that even hope can be destroyed. And so new battles emerge, fought not just over land or ideology, but over the future itself. Traore must respond with more than weapons. He must bind the people to the project, making them its true guardians. In some villages, panels are installed locally, giving communities ownership. In others, young men and women are trained as technicians, turning the solar farm into a source of jobs and pride. Slowly, the project stops being a government initiative and becomes something deeper, a people's movement. The desert panels may be the core, but the true power lies in the hearts of those who defend them. The cultural impact is equally profound. For generations, stories in Burkina Faso have been filled with hardship, drought, hunger, colonialism, coups. Now new stories begin to rise. Songs about the sun no longer mourn its heat, but celebrate its gift. Children draw pictures of shining fields of panels. Elders speak of how darkness once ruled the night and how light was reclaimed. Culture, once shaped by survival, begins to bend toward possibility. Globally, the ripple spreads further. In Europe, policymakers watch closely. For years, they have sought ways to reduce dependence on Russian gas, to move toward renewable energy. A massive solar farm in Africa suddenly offers new possibilities. Could African sunlight power European cities? Could new cables stretch under the Mediterranean, bringing electricity northward? Some European leaders see opportunity, others see danger. Fear that a rising Africa may no longer be a partner of weakness, but a competitor of strength. In the Gulf states, built on oil wealth, the reaction is mixed. Some rulers recognize that the age of fossil fuels is fading, and they look to join the renewable race, investing in Traore's dream. Others feel threatened. If Africa can generate massive solar power, what happens to oil demand? What happens to the balance of wealth that has defined the modern world? And within Africa, the psychological shift grows louder. In Lagos, in Dakar, in Nairobi, young people watch news of Burkina Faso's solar farm and ask, if they can do it, why can't we? The idea spreads faster than panels themselves. Governments begin to announce their own projects. Africa, once seen as the land left behind, now begins to look like the laboratory of the future. But with every rise comes risk. Traore's position becomes more precarious. International powers may not need to send armies or coups. They can destabilize with markets, with loans, with narratives. Rumors begin to circulate. The project is unsustainable. The government is corrupt. The debt is dangerous. Information becomes a weapon, wielded by those who fear a self-reliant Africa. Traore, young as he is, must shoulder the burden of history. He knows the fate of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who once dreamed of a self-sufficient Burkina Faso before being silenced. He knows how often Africa's brightest lights have been dimmed before their time. The solar farm is not just his legacy, it is his shield. If it succeeds, it protects him. If it fails, it buries him. Yet history is never written in advance. Imagine the farm at full capacity, stretching like an artificial sun across the desert. Imagine Burkina Faso exporting power to Mali, Niger, Côte d'Ivoire, maybe even across continents. Imagine a continent once dismissed as powerless, now lighting the world. Such a vision is vast, almost unthinkable, but that is exactly what makes it powerful. In the end, the question is not just whether Traore can build the largest solar farm in Africa. The real question is whether he can turn that farm into something larger than technology, into a symbol, a movement, a story strong enough to outlast him. Because solar panels alone can break, be stolen, be destroyed. But an idea, once planted, can spread like sunlight, impossible to contain. And so, the story returns to the people. A farmer irrigating his land at midnight. A student reading with steady light. A mother hearing the hum of machines in a clinic. These are not statistics. They are revolutions in daily life. They are the quiet victories that no enemy can erase. One day, perhaps decades from now, historians may look back at Burkina Faso in the early 21st century and say, this was the turning point. The moment when Africa stopped waiting for others to bring the future and instead built it from its own sun. Or perhaps they will say, this was the dream that was too bright, too threatening, and so it was dimmed before its time. The truth hangs in the balance, as fragile as a panel under the desert wind, and as powerful as the sun that strikes it every morning. And it leaves us with one haunting, beautiful question. What if Ibrahim Traoré, against all odds, truly lit up not just his nation, but the whole of Africa, and in doing so, changed the destiny of the world? Subscribe for more videos and comment what you think about this.